My name is Sloane Hart. I'm 31 years old, and at my mother's birthday dinner, a dinner I planned, booked, and paid for, my older sister tapped the serving spoon out of my hand and announced to the entire table, "Don't fill that. You didn't contribute a penny to this dinner." She said it loud on purpose. Forks stopped midair. My mother smiled into her wine glass and said, "Real family first." What my sister didn't know was that my card was already on the reservation. The deposit, the contract, the balance due after dessert. All of it had one name on it, mine. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I folded my napkin, put on my red coat, and walked to the lobby. I asked the manager to remove my payment from the bill. Then I stood outside the glass doors and watched a black leather folio land next to my sister's plate while the manager said, word for word, "The woman in the red coat canceled the payment and asked me to hand this to the table." Her smile died in real time. But here's what none of them understood yet, not even her. That dinner was the smallest thing my money was doing for that family. She told me not to eat food I supposedly didn't pay for. So I stopped paying for the dinner and then for the version of their life my money had been quietly holding up. I work as a senior project coordinator at a mid-sized design-build firm in the Portland metro area. If you don't know what that means, it means this. Nothing gets built without me, and nobody takes a picture of me at the ribbon cutting. I run schedules, budgets, vendor contracts, change orders. When a project finishes on time, the architect gets the award, the owner gets the applause, and somewhere in the back of the room there's a woman with a binder who made every single deadline happen. That's me. I'd just been promoted, new title, real raise, and I hadn't told my family, because I already knew how that conversation would go. In my family, there are two jobs. My sister Camden's job is to shine. My job is to hold the ladder. Camden is 34. She calls herself a lifestyle creator. Her word is visionary. Her actual income is a mystery that resolves itself every month somewhere in my banking app. My mother, Doreen, works in a school office and has spent 3 decades smoothing Camden's path like it's a second job. My father, Ellis, supervises a warehouse and has perfected the art of studying a wine label, a phone screen, a car manual, anything with text on it, whenever this family needs an adult to say a true sentence out loud. The pattern was set early. When I organized our grandparents' 50th anniversary party at 16, Camden gave the welcome speech and got the thank you cards. When I paid off the last of my own student loans, the family celebration that month was for Camden's rebrand. Every time I corrected the record, my mother said I was being sensitive. Every time I stayed silent, Camden treated the silence as a signature on whatever story she was telling. And the money. Let me lay out the money, because it matters later. Count along with me. Every month, $520 went from my account to my parents, the float, we called it, covering the gap between their bills and their budget, since Dad's hours got cut 2 years ago. Camden's, just until Friday loans, $200 here, $150 there, had quietly crossed $4,100 over 3 years, repaid exactly never. The family phone plan, for lines, sat in my name because bundling was cheaper. The streaming accounts and the family photo cloud ran on my cards. And there was an emergency transfer app my mother and sister both knew would answer within the hour, because it always had. Nobody called me generous. Generosity implies someone noticed. This was infrastructure. You don't think the plumbing. Then, in early fall, my mother called and said she wanted one simple dinner for her 58th birthday. Nothing fancy. Just the family, one long table, one nice night. In our family, simple never stays simple. Within a day, Camden posted in the family group chat that she was handling the vision for Mom's birthday. Relatives sent hearts. Mom sent 3. And then Camden did what Camden always does with a project. She performed the announcement and vanished from the work. The venue asked for a deposit, silence. A guest count, silence. A signed agreement, silence that could win awards. So I did what I do professionally. I found Cedarline House, a hotel restaurant with a private dining room, warm wood, good light, the kind of room my mother would call too much and then never stop talking about. I signed the contract. I paid a $1,700 non-refundable room deposit. I authorized my card for the full balance after service. The original package came in just under $7,500, and I decided that was my gift to my mother, and I made one specific request to the event coordinator, a composed, precise woman named Priya. "Don't announce who paid," I told her. "No speech, no reveal. This is for my mother, not about me." I wanted one family evening that didn't turn into a scoreboard. Remember that sentence. I paid $1,700 for that sentence, and it turned out to be the cheapest lesson on the bill. Because the moment the reservation existed, Camden reappeared, not to help, to decorate. Upgrade emails started landing at the venue: a champagne wall, a raw seafood bar, a videographer, 8 additional guests I'd never heard of. Each time, Priya copied me, and each time, Camden had already replied, "Approved, Sloan knows." I called Priya and set one rule in writing: nothing gets added to this event without my written consent. She flagged the file. I approved the flowers for Mom, peonies, her favorite, and declined everything else. 2 days later, Camden called me, sugar first, then vinegar. "Why are you making this difficult? Mom only turns 58 once." I told her she was welcome to fund her own upgrades. There was a pause, and then she said the sentence that told me exactly who was coming to dinner. "You always make money so awkward." Money is never awkward for the person spending someone else's. The night of the party, I arrived early in a red coat over a simple black dress. Priya walked me through the final estimate, $8,650, including service, tax, and the peonies. My card would be charged after dessert. I signed the updated authorization and slid my copy into my purse, a piece of paper that, in about 90 minutes, was going to matter very much. Camden arrived 20 minutes later in champagne gold, kissed Mom on both cheeks, and took command of a room she had never once emailed. She repositioned the photographer. She complained the centerpieces were too low. She told my Aunt Renata, twice, I counted, that she had lost sleep for weeks putting this together. She moved the place cards, and when I found mine, it had migrated from the host's seat beside Mom down to the far end of the table, past the cousins, next to the coat rack. I quietly moved my card back to the seat Priya had assigned me. Camden appeared at my shoulder like a manager catching a shoplifter. "That seat's for whoever organized tonight," she said, with the bright, carrying voice she uses when an audience is in range. I looked at her for a moment and said, "Are you sure you want that to be the rule?" She smiled because she was certain I was bluffing. I sat down anyway. Small victory. Enjoy it, Sloan. It's the last one for a while. Dinner began, and Camden went to work on the evening the way a magician works a crowd: misdirection, patter, applause cues. During the first course, she talked over me so smoothly that twice I heard my own anecdotes come out of her mouth with her cast as the lead. During the second course, relatives complimented the venue, and she accepted with a modest little bow of the head. It was a labor of love. My mother beamed at her. My father examined the wine label like it was a legal document. And I sat there doing the quiet math I always did at family events: the flowers I'd approved, the town car I'd booked to bring Grandma Ruth, the transfer leaving my account in 9 days. While my sister collected a standing ovation for a party she had contributed exactly one thing to: herself. Here's the emotional pill of this whole story, and I want you to swallow it with me. What happened next wasn't random cruelty. It was the closing act of a long edit. Camden had spent the evening, spent years, carefully cropping me out of my own gifts. The place card was an edit. The talked-over stories were edits. The labor of love was an edit. There was only one thing left in the frame with my name on it, one thing I was still visibly about to receive from this family: a plate of food. The main course arrived: herb-crusted salmon, family style, on long platters. Conversation was loud. My mother was laughing, and I reached for the serving spoon. Camden's manicured finger came down on the spoon handle like a small pink gavel. "Don't fill that," she said. Loud, clean, rehearsed. "You didn't contribute a penny to this dinner." The table collapsed into silence, the specific family silence I'd been managing my whole life, every eye on me, measuring how gracefully I would absorb it. My Aunt Renata suddenly needed to fix her napkin. My cousin Theo studied his water glass. My father, Ellis, turned the wine bottle 45 degrees and read the back. And my mother smiled into her glass and delivered the line she believed was peacekeeping, Camden's only teasing. Real family first. We should be grateful to the people who actually made tonight happen. I had signed every document for tonight. I had arrived before all of them. I was sitting one seat off from where I belonged because my sister had physically moved my name down the table. And my mother had just called me the outsider at a dinner I was funding, in a room I had booked, over flowers I had chosen because they were her favorite. I asked, very calmly, "Who do you believe paid for tonight?" My mother blinked, surprised I'd answered at all. Camden laughed before Mom could speak. "Please. You RSVP'd, Sloan. That's your contribution. What did you do? Book the room with Dad's loyalty points?" And right there, with my hand still an inch from the serving spoon, I felt the question of my entire life finally get answered. I could have opened my purse. I could have laid the signed authorization beside her plate like a verdict. But a colder, cleaner question stopped me. If proof was the only language this family respected, why was I still paying tuition for people who had already graduated me into worthless? I set the serving spoon down. I looked at my sister. And I said, "You're right." Camden blinked. She had prepared for tears, or a scene, or one of my careful explanations she could sweat away like always. She had not prepared for agreement. "I shouldn't eat food I didn't contribute to," I said. My mother gave a relieved little laugh. She thought I'd surrendered. I folded my napkin along its original creases, laid it beside my untouched plate, and stood. Camden's smile widened. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I said, sliding my chair in. "I'm correcting the arrangement." I put on my red coat and walked toward the lobby. And here is the detail that hurt more than the insult. The detail I want you to sit with. Nobody followed me. Not my mother. Not my father. 22 people watched the woman who built the evening walk out of it, and the conversation resumed before I cleared the doorway. I heard it resume. That sound made the next decision easy. Priya was at the reception desk. I asked whether the final charge had processed. It hadn't. My authorization would convert after dessert. I said, "Remove my card from the folio." To her credit, she didn't gasp. She quietly confirmed the consequences like the professional she was. The $1,700 deposit was non-refundable, and the remaining balance, $8,730 with the evening service charges, would become due from the party tonight. "I understand," I said. "Keep the deposit. Consider it tuition." She paused, pen over the tablet. "Would you like me to tell them there's been a payment issue?" "No," I said. "Tell them the truth. The woman in the red coat canceled the payment and asked you to hand this to the table." She looked at me for 1 second longer than professionalism required, and I promise you, somewhere behind her composed expression, a woman who had worked hospitality for 15 years was applauding. Then she printed the folio. I didn't leave. I stood in the lobby, outside the glass partition, coat on, and watched it happen like a project milestone I had personally scheduled. Priya crossed the private dining room. She placed the black leather folio beside Camden's plate, not my mother's, Camden's. I had asked for that too, and she said the sentence. I couldn't hear it through the glass. I didn't need to. I watched it land on the table like weather. Forks down. Heads turning. My mother leaning in, confused. And Camden opened the folio, read the total, and her face did something I had never once seen it do in 31 years. It stopped performing. My father reached me first. He came through the doors with his napkin still in his hand, and the first thing my father said to me, after his oldest daughter publicly told me I hadn't contributed a penny, after his wife toasted real family over my empty plate, was, "Sloan, what did you do?" Not, "What did they say to you?" Not, "Why are you in the lobby?" Not, "Are you okay?" What did you do? 31 years of family policy in 4 words. Camden's actions were weather, mine were choices. I stopped paying for a dinner I was told I hadn't contributed to, I said. Camden set the rule. I'm just enforcing it. This is your mother's birthday. It was also my gift, I said. Camden refused delivery. In front of everyone. I'm respecting her decision. Behind him, the dining room was reorganizing itself around the folio. Camden stood, waving it like a flag. This is insane. She can't just dump this on us. And Priya, calm as a printed schedule, answered the question the whole room was suddenly asking. The host removed her payment method before settlement. The outstanding balance is $8,730. The host, someone said. Camden's the host. And Priya opened her tablet. The signed contract, the room deposit, the menu approvals, and the card authorization are all in the name Sloane Hart. She scrolled once. The file also shows several upgrade requests submitted from another family member's email that were declined because that person was never financially authorized on this event. I watched the murmur travel down the table like a current. I watched my Aunt Renata whisper, "I thought Camden paid." I watched my cousin Theo say, louder than he meant to, "That's what she told us." I watched 22 people rerun the entire evening in their heads, the labor of love, the lost sleep, the host's seat, against the name on the contract. My mother turned toward the glass and found me in the lobby. "Sloane, come back inside," she called. "We can discuss this privately." "You are comfortable humiliating me publicly," I said. "Why does the truth suddenly need privacy?" She had no answer. And that was when my grandmother finally spoke. Grandma Ruth is 81. She had been quiet all evening, but her quiet has never been my father's quiet. Alice's silence is a hiding place. Ruth's silence is a courtroom. She sat through the whole performance sipping ice water, watching, cataloging, and now she set down her glass, removed her reading glasses, and folded them with a click that somehow silenced a room the folio had only rattled. "Before anyone scolds Sloane," she said, "Camden can explain why she collected money from half this table for a dinner Sloane had already paid for." I stopped breathing. I had known Camden was taking credit. Credit was Camden's native currency. I had not known she was taking cash. Ruth slid her phone onto the tablecloth, screen up, and there it was, in Camden's own bubbly typing, sent 12 days earlier. "Hey lovelies, I'm covering Mom's big night, but it's a lot to hearts. Send your share by Friday. Every little bit helps." Below it, Ruth's transfer receipt. $400 from a woman on a fixed income to a granddaughter with a champagne wall aesthetic. Then the table did the thing I will never forget. Everyone reached for their phones at once. My Aunt Renata found her transfer, $350. Theo found his $200. A family friend found another. Within 1 minute, the running total of Camden's shares had crossed $1,800, collected for an event whose every invoice had my name on it. The room was no longer looking at me. I watched every eye at that table swing to my sister, and I understood I could not have engineered this moment with a decade of planning. All I'd done was stop paying for the curtain. The stage collapsed on its own. Camden went through her repertoire at speed. First, that money was for extras, flowers, the car for grandma, tips, things Sloane forgot. Priya, without being asked, turned the tablet toward the nearest relatives, transportation booked and paid directly by Ms. Hart, florals included in the venue total, gratuity included in the service charge. Second, it's still in my account, I was going to put it toward a surprise. Renata asked, in the flattest voice I've ever heard from that sweet woman, "What surprise, Camden?" There was no surprise. Third and fastest, Sloane set this up. She knew exactly how this would look. I did finally step back through the glass doors for that one, not to rescue anyone, but because I wanted her to hear me at normal volume. "I didn't know about the transfers," I said. "But I notice your defense to stealing from the family is that I made it visible." And then Ruth raised one hand, and the room went quiet again, and she said the sentence that ended the evening's argument permanently. "There is nothing unclear about, send me your share. You let this family believe you financed the night. You insulted the person who actually did. And you collected money on top of it. That's not a misunderstanding, Camden. That's a business model." My mother was staring at Camden with an expression I'd waited 30 years to see, not anger yet, just arithmetic. "You told me you had it handled," she said slowly. "You let me thank you." Camden reached into her purse and produced her own card with a flourish designed to end the scene. "Fine," she said. "Charge it. Then everyone can stop acting like I committed a crime." Priya took the card to the terminal. The room waited. The machine considered. Declined. Camden, jaw tight, handed over a second card, the rose gold one she flashes in her content. Declined. Nobody laughed. I want to be precise about that, because the silence was so much worse for her than laughter would have been. Laughter would have made her a victim. Silence just made her visible, the whole polished influencer architecture, standing there in champagne gold, with no floor under it. The bill got settled the unglamorous way, the way real families clean up after a fraud. My father paid a portion. My mother moved money from savings at the table on her birthday, in front of her guests. The relatives who'd sent shares applied them, but only after Camden, transfer by transfer, in full view of everyone, sent their money back. And the last gap she couldn't cover, my father loaned her out loud, with witnesses. This gets documented, and you pay me monthly. He finally found a sentence. It only cost him $8,000 to locate it. Dessert was served to a silent room. Nobody asked Camden to give the toast. The photographer quietly deleted her shot list. And when Priya offered me a slice of my mother's cake, the blue and white one I had chosen, I declined it, thanked her for her professionalism, and went home. I had lost $1,700, and I want to tell you exactly what I bought with it because it was the best purchase of my adult life. I bought the end of a question. For years, I'd wondered whether my family failed to see me because I explained myself badly. Now I had a controlled experiment. They hadn't missed the truth. They had declined it. The way you decline a call you know is about money you owe. My silence had simply been convenient. And starting at 9 o'clock the next morning, so was my clarity. And if you're sitting where I was sitting that night, paid in silence, shamed out loud, pause right here and give me one word in the comments. Funding if you're still doing it, or stopped if you already quit. I read every one. Because the folio was only lesson 1. The next morning, I opened my banking app and taught the seminar. Camden lasted 11 days. On a Tuesday, my office receptionist called up, "There's a Camden heart here for you," in the tone of a woman who had already clocked the sunglasses indoors. I came down to the lobby because I didn't want her upstairs among my colleagues, in the one building where my name means what it says. She was holding an envelope. Inside was a check for $1,700, the deposit to the penny. "There," she said, pushing it at me. "Now we're even and everyone can calm down. I want you to appreciate the engineering of that check, because I did, the way you appreciate a rigged bid." $1,700 bought back the one loss that was technically mine by choice and none of the rest. Not the $4,100 in loans. Not the shares she'd collected from a grandmother on a fixed income. Not the years. It was the cheapest possible model of repentance. Pay the smallest visible number, reset the machine, resume service. The check wasn't an apology. It was a subscription renewal. I handed it back. "We're not even. Money is the easiest part of what you owe." She pulled off the sunglasses. Tired eyes, intact anger. "Then what do you want, Sloan? An audience? You want me to grovel?" "I want a correction," I said. "In the same group chat where you collected the shares. You tell the family I planned and funded the dinner. You tell them you took money while claiming you were paying. You repay every transfer, you keep the schedule with Dad, and you stop speaking for me, to the venue, to the family, to anyone. Forever." She stared at me like I'd asked for a kidney. "You want me to torch my own reputation?" "No," I said. "I want you to stop building it on mine." And then she reached for the last weapon in the bag, the one that had worked for 30 years. Her voice dropped, soft and almost kind. "Mom will never forgive you for this. You know that, right? You're breaking her heart." There it was. Not remorse, leverage. She hadn't come to apologize. She had come to restore the old arrangement at clearance pricing. I accept a token, I absorb the blame, everyone resumes. I put the envelope back in her hand and closed her fingers over it. "Then Mom can make her own choice," I said. "For once, so am I." 2 days later, my mother requested a family meeting at the house. I agreed on one condition, stated in writing in the group chat so it couldn't be renegotiated at the door. Nobody asks me to apologize for leaving the dinner. My mother sent a thumbs up. My father sent nothing. Ruth replied, "I'll bring my folder." I did not know what that meant yet. Camden surely hoped it meant recipes. The meeting opened exactly as scheduled programming. My mother, hands around a mug she wasn't drinking from, delivering the speech about sisters, about misunderstandings, about how one painful night shouldn't erase a lifetime of love. I listened all the way to the sentence I knew was coming. "You could have handled it privately, Sloan." "I tried private for years," I said. "Every time Camden took credit, you told me to let it go." Privacy never solved the problem. Privacy was where the problem lived. And then Ruth opened her folder. 2 pages, she said she'd kept it to 2 on purpose, because the point isn't volume, Doreen, it's pattern. Page 1. The baby shower for Theo's wife that the family still credits to Camden, with the receipts showing I'd booked and paid for all of it, and Camden's message to the relatives, planned every detail myself, pleading face. Page 2. Ruth's own 80th birthday, the one I skipped, the family's favorite proof that I was too busy for the people who mattered. Attached, Camden's text to me with the restaurant name and a start time 90 minutes after the actual reservation, and her message to the table that night. Sloan said this wasn't a priority. I had never seen that second one. I heard my own breath change. My mother read both pages twice. My father read them once, and then he did the thing I'd stopped expecting sometime in my 20s. He looked up, looked at me, and said a true sentence out loud. "I knew," he said. "Not the money. But the way you two were treated, I knew. Confrontation was exhausting, and you seemed like you could take it. So I stayed quiet." "Your silence was a decision, Dad," I said. "It felt like neutrality to you. It functioned as a vote for her every single time. My whole childhood, I thought you were absent. You weren't absent. You were abstaining, and abstaining, in this family, always counted for Camden." He nodded slowly. He didn't defend himself. It was the most he'd given me in a decade, and the saddest part is how enormous it felt. My mother began to cry, and I watched my own hands stay in my lap. That was new. All my life, her tears had been my cue, the stage direction that ended every scene. Sloan comforts, Sloan concedes, curtain. Not this time. I wasn't punishing her. I had simply, finally, resigned from the role. Camden, silent until then, asked the only question she had left. "So what happens now?" And I gave her the truth line of my whole life, the one I'd been swallowing since I was 16, the one that had been sitting under every family dinner like a foundation nobody inspected. "You all keep saying I'm destroying this family. But notice when the family gets destroyed. Not when Camden lied. Not when she collected money from Grandma. Not when Mom toasted over my empty plate. The family only becomes destroyed when I stop absorbing the damage. That's not destruction, Camden. That's just what it looks like when the invoice finally arrives at the right address." Nobody hugged at the end of that meeting. Real repair doesn't photograph well. What happened instead was slower, quieter, and, for the first time in my family's history, administrative. It started badly, because of course it did. 3 days after the meeting, Camden posted a public statement to her followers. "I'll spare you the whole thing." The load-bearing sentence was, "Emotions were high at a recent family event, and assumptions were made on all sides. I'm choosing growth." Assumptions were made. On all sides. A masterpiece of the passive voice, an apology with no apologizer, an offense with no offender, and, somehow, once again, a version of the story where the woman who paid for everything and the woman who lied about everything were equally at fault. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Grandma Ruth, 81 years old, typing with one finger, replied privately with a single question. "Would you like me to post the screenshots, or would you like to try again?" The post came down within the hour. What replaced it, a day later, was short and unlovely and true. "At my mother's birthday, I claimed credit for a dinner my sister Sloan planned and fully paid for. I collected money from relatives for costs that didn't exist. I publicly told her she hadn't contributed a penny. That was false, and it was cruel. I'm repaying everyone. I'm sorry, Sloan." No emojis. No growth journey language. Ruth called me when it posted and said, that one she wrote with her own spine. First time in years. The corrections spread through the family like water finding level. Renata got her $350 back and set her own boundary. No more group collections without receipts. Theo got his $200 and told Camden, without heat, that he needed distance for a while. Sometimes the quiet cousins are the ones keeping the truest books. The relatives, unprompted, agreed on one rule for all future events. Whoever pays, plans, and whoever plans shows the contract. My mother did the hardest thing on her list, and I want to give her credit for it, because this story isn't about a villain mother. It's about a tired one who chose the easy child to believe. She removed Camden from every family financial role: the shared gift fund, the holiday collections, the reunion planning. She handed the records to an outside bookkeeper, an actual professional, a stranger with a spreadsheet and no favorite daughter. "I can't be the referee," she told me on the phone. "I've proven I can't. So I'm hiring one." It was the most honest sentence she'd said to me in years, and neither of us pointed out how much it cost her to say it. My father ran the repayment schedule like the warehouse he supervises: dates, amounts, a shared document the whole family could see. Camden paid him monthly, on time, mostly because for the first time in her life, an audience was watching her be reliable instead of watching her sparkle, and Camden has never once in her life disappointed an audience. Use the machine that runs the person. Even her rebrand went quiet for a season: hard to sell abundance mindset content while a public spreadsheet tracks your debt to your father. And the money I'd shut off stayed off. But here's the part one need you to hear, because this is the difference between a boundary and a punishment. When my parents' phone lines ported out, I spent a Saturday helping them pick their own plan and set up autopay from their own account. When the photo cloud export link arrived, I walked my mother through downloading 40 years of pictures, and we ended up looking at half of them together at her kitchen table. I would not fund their life. I would absolutely help them run it. That distinction, help that builds capacity instead of help that hides reality, turned out to be the whole ballgame. My monthly float had kept their budget broken for 2 years by making the break invisible. 60 days after I canceled it, my parents had done what the float had been preventing. They'd looked at their actual numbers, cut what didn't fit, and balanced. My mother told me this with an odd shine in her voice, like a woman reporting she'd learned to swim at 58. Turns out she'd never needed a lifeguard. She'd needed the flotation device removed. Months later, my parents invited me to dinner at the house. They cooked. They paid for every ingredient. My mother mentioned this twice, and I let her, because it mattered to her that I knew. Camden was there, quieter than I'd ever seen her, 3 payments into her schedule with Dad. And when the food reached the table, I did something I had never once done in that house. I picked up the serving spoon first and filled my own plate, completely, without waiting, without asking, without reading the room. Nobody said a word. Then Camden reached across the table, turned the serving dish so the handle faced me, and said, quietly, "You first." It wasn't an apology. It was better, it was a changed reflex. Apologies are speeches. Reflexes are renovations. Later, at the door, Camden asked me the question she'd been carrying all evening. "Are we ever going to be like we were?" "No," I said, and I watched her flinch, and then I finished the sentence. "Because you didn't lose a sister over a serving spoon. You lost free labor that answered to humiliation. The sister is still available. She just comes with an invoice now, like everyone else you respect." So where is everything now? My phone is quiet. I need you to understand what that means, because I didn't until it happened. For 10 years my phone was a service desk, transfer requests dressed up as emergencies, guilt dressed up as check-ins, Camden's Friday deadline breathing down every week. When the money stopped, the traffic stopped, and I learned the saddest metric of my old life, exactly how much of my family's contact with me had been billing inquiries. But here's the other side, the side that makes it worth it. What's left is real. When my mother calls now, it's because she wants to talk to me. I know this the way you know a load-bearing wall. I removed everything else, and the calls that remained are the ones holding something up. I sleep through the night. My promotion turned into another one. It's remarkable what a person can do at work when she isn't running a second unpaid job as a family's bank, referee, and shock absorber. My mother came to my apartment one Sunday, alone, uninvited but not unwelcome, and she brought something in her purse. She set it on my counter, a place card. Cream stock, printed in the Cedaline House font. Sloan. The one Camden had moved to the end of the table. Priya mailed it to me, she said. I asked her to. I needed to keep the evidence of the exact moment I should have spoken and didn't. And then she gave me the apology I'd stopped waiting for, no tears deployed as pressure, no demand that I comfort her through her own remorse. She said, "You were easy to overlook because you never made overlooking you expensive. Camden charged for everything, so we paid attention. You charged nothing, so we paid nothing. That was my failure, not your fault. I'm not asking you to fix how I feel about it. I just needed you to hear me say it." Then she washed her coffee cup, kissed my forehead, and left. That's what a real apology looks like, by the way. It fits in 10 minutes. It asks for nothing. It leaves the place card on your counter and lets you decide what it means. Camden and I took the longest. For most of a year, we existed at family events like polite coworkers, cordial, accurate, careful. Then one afternoon she asked me to coffee. No occasion, no audience, and somewhere in the second cup she said the truest thing I've ever heard from her. "I used to think you having money meant I was owed some of it. Watching you cancel everything, I hated you for months." Then my first repayment cleared and I felt something I couldn't name, and my therapist made me name it. It was pride. First thing I'd paid for entirely by myself in years. I asked her the question I'd been saving. That night, "Were you sorry you hurt me, or sorry it all came apart?" She stirred her coffee for a long time. That night? Sorry it came apart. Now? Sorry I hurt you. It took the whole year to get from one to the other. I believed her because it was unflattering, and Camden never volunteers unflattering. We talk now. Slowly. She has no access to my accounts and no need for it, and it turns out that's what lets us have access to each other. The red coat hangs by my door. I wear it when I need to remember that leaving a table isn't losing a seat. In my desk drawer there's a photocopy of the folio, $8,730, due on delivery, and behind it, the screenshot, every autopay, every transfer, every quiet subsidy, all showing the same word. Off. The spoon, the folio, the switch. That's the whole story in 3 objects. One was used to shame me. One told the truth. One set me free. So let me leave you with what I actually learned, because it isn't cut off your family, and it isn't revenge feels good. Most of the time it doesn't. It feels like paperwork and grief, and both of those pass. A plate is small. A pattern is not. If your generosity only ever earns you shame, then stopping payment isn't cruelty, it's the first accurate invoice you've ever sent. And here's the strange grace on the other side of it. Some people, when the invoice arrives, surprise you. They pay. They grow a spine. They turn the serving dish so the handle faces you. But they only get that chance, and you only get to see who they really are after you stop covering the bill. Clarity isn't cold. Clarity is what ends the family tradition of pricing your pain as everyone else's comfort. My sister told me not to fill my plate because I hadn't contributed a penny. She was wrong about the dinner. But in the way that matters most, I've decided she was right on schedule, because until that sentence, I was never going to stop. So I filled something better than a plate. I filled out the paperwork. And this year, at my mother's birthday, a small dinner at the house that my parents planned and paid for themselves, I was served first. Nobody announced it. Nobody made it a moment. The dish just came to me before anyone else, handle first, like it was the most natural thing in the world. It only took canceling everything for it to become one. If you made it this far, you're my favorite kind of viewer, so tell me the truth down in the comments. Would you have canceled only the dinner or every quiet transfer that kept the lie standing? Comment, bill, or life. Hit like if you think that folio belonged exactly where it landed on her plate. And subscribe, because there are more stories like this one, real boundaries, receipts included, no screaming required. If family has ever made you the invisible sponsor of your own humiliation, share this with someone who needs the permission. See you in the next one.